Good morning, almost afternoon, everyone. My name is Christy Gooding. I lead corporate communications at F&G, a life insurance and annuities company based in Des Moines, Iowa. My team includes internal and external communications, social media, corporate events, and charitable giving. I had used Trello previously at another company, so was excited when I found out it was a possibility for me to use at F&G.
And I'm Mark Kraus, Solutions Architect and Head of Work Management for C-Prime, a full-service global consulting firm. I've been working with Atlassian tools for about 5 years and have always been a big fan of Trello. So today we're going to talk about the work management capabilities of Trello.
Great. All right. We're going to walk through my team's journey to build out a Trello work environment that streamlined our team's planning, collaboration, and visibility. I'll share how we identified the problems we needed to solve and how we determined that Trello was the right solution for our team.
And then we'll discuss how we worked together to build a custom Trello environment that would fit the basic needs and how we built upon that basic setup by testing, iterating, until we built out a highly refined, highly efficient work management system. Finally, we'll walk through our process for training the teams and rolling out the finished product. We set some time aside at the end for questions, but if anyone has any questions while we're presenting, feel free to raise your hand and we'll come around with a mic and answer it.
So not like other teams at other companies, we use a lot of different ways to communicate with one another and share information with one another. The problem is that not everything was synced up. Why this is really important at F&G is that we are now a 100% hybrid organization. So what that means is people can work wherever they want to work. So my team is not all in the office in Des Moines, Iowa. So we needed to find a solution that allowed us to be collaborative as much as we wanted to be collaborative, right? Work together, but we were overloading each other's email inboxes. We were not being, proactive with our communications. So that was really what we were trying to solve for. And with so many projects that we were working on, so many different things, what we really needed was a solution that provided two key elements. And the first was an editorial calendar. We needed to be able to plan out our communications and also schedule them. And this was something that we did not have the capability to do. We had people who were maintaining Excel spreadsheets. We had team members who had to-do lists. It was not cohesive in any way. And people, because we weren't all together in the same building, in the same rooms, there were siloed conversations happening, and there were people working together and thinking they were being collaborative, but then other members of our team who were working on different things were over here and kept in the dark. So the calendar function was a really big deal for us. And the second thing was the dashboard view. We needed something where we could see everything that was coming, one holistic view of all of our projects, all of the different events we were doing, the corporate sponsorships, and each of the tasks that were required under them. So that was a very important feature for us as well. So when we identified the problems that we were looking to solve and we had those documented, we teamed up with Mark and the C-Prime team to really evaluate all of our different options.
And the F&G team's focus was on allowing their teams to see the big picture and coordinate their communications efforts without spending a bunch of time and effort on managing the tool. As we began to evaluate the options, Trello quickly became the obvious tool of choice. It combines an easy-to-use interface that maximizes team adoption with automation tools that can minimize the amount of effort needed to manage the tool day to day. As a corporate communications department, it was important for them to make sure everyone could see the big picture and understand how all the external communication channels work together to build a coherent message.
So a significant piece of that picture was that out-of-box calendar view. As I mentioned, we needed an editorial calendar with a single view that aligned and showed everyone what we were working on, what was coming, whether it was that day, within the week, quarterly, or even yearly. So we needed to make sure that we had a space to plan exactly what we needed in advance, where we could brainstorm together regardless of where we were located, and the project owners could they at least knew what other people were doing and what other communications were planned, and then we could have very strategic conversations and determine, what could override another project. If we had two really important communications scheduled for the same day, or if we had a CEO message that needed to go out, we could then see the whole picture in one view and make those critical decisions. So with the tools selected, we began working with Mark and Cprime to build out the environment so that we could synchronize all of our communications.
Our first goal was to lock in the requirements for the project and prioritize the features. Within a few meetings, everyone working in the effort had a good understanding of the system and the goals it was going to accomplish. We started out with the basics that we wanted to build out, and the first up was the basic structure of the environment. Each team would have their own board and their own separate workflow, but we would need to allow for a lot of cross-functioning teams, or a lot of cross-functioning work to happen between those teams. And after we had the structure built and had a good foundation, we started to expand on it with some more complex elements. Like any good Agile process, we experimented with different ideas, and we tested them as we went along. Some of them ended up working out great and ended up making it into the final product. And others did not. For us, some of the third-party power-ups that we were trying to implement didn't end up fitting the needs of the project, and we ended up moving away from those. We also ran up against some basic limitations of the system that forced us to find other solutions. But as we went through, none of the issues that came up ended up being critical to the project. They were all just kind of part of the process as we went. And the most useful tool within Trello that we ended up maximizing was the built-in automation tool. Keeping in mind that one of the primary goals of the F&G team was to minimize user effort and the amount of time managing the tool, we knew we had to have the automation do as much of the work as possible. So we built out automations that would add pre-built checklists to cards as needed. We added automations that would add review and edit flags to the cards. We added automations to create linked cards for the cross-functioning teams, and automations to give the content teams notice of upcoming holidays and events. And as we built out the environment, we had frequent meetings to demo the built-out ideas from the previous sessions and evaluate them. This process allowed us to keep what worked and drop what wasn't ideal or didn't fit the teams as we refined the system. So as we progressed, we brought in more and more teams and team members to continue to evaluate and have as many different perspectives as possible. And once we were confident we had a highly functional system that met all the team's requirements and maximized the goals of the project, it was time to start documentation and rollout. So we started with the process of documenting all the elements of the system, how to use them, how to administer them, and how to edit them.
So we then assembled the teams for training, and we held a few different training sessions, but we wanted to make sure that the people who were going to be using Trello frequently on a daily basis really knew how to best use the system. So through the training, we actually learned that a few of our teams, our corporate events, charitable sponsorships, and social media teams needed to use Trello just a little bit differently than internal and external comms. So we actually went back to Cprime and added some additional features for those 3 segments so that they could then have the features that they needed to really effectively do their jobs. So after some initial hesitation, and it wasn't from our team, we got a lot of pushback, and I don't want to say a lot of pushback. We did have some hesitation from some of our partners within marketing moving to Trello. We had a little bit of hesitation from some other areas in the company, like, why do you need this? Why is this something that only communications needs? But it was really nice because once they saw it and once we did a little bit of a show, like a road show for them, and they saw what we were using it for and how nicely it complemented what we're already using, Confluence and Jira, everybody got on board, and now I have a lot of different teams who are requesting Trello for their teams.
And one of the big advantages of the tool that was a selling point was the ability to integrate with their existing Jira and Confluence tools that they were already using. So that eased a lot of that pushback, because the big question was always, why do you need Trello when we already have Jira?
Yes.
And this was really to complement how they were using Jira and expand, which teams were working together and collaborating.
And I will, just to add to that, I just want to say one other thing that was very helpful for me. I'm in communications, so I don't speak IT talk, and it's really, sometimes I know what I know and I know what I want. It was really beneficial for me to have a Trello expert come in and understand what I was trying to solve for, what I needed it for, and help communicate it back to our IT team. And that was extremely, for me and for my team, it was extremely beneficial. So with that, I know this was very quick, but we also know it's around lunchtime. Who has the first question?
What other methods did you use to overcome the fear of change and adopting?
What was actually very interesting is when we started, internally, we didn't have, our company's growing very quickly and changing all the time, so we did not have anybody who was really a Trello expert. So I kept, my primary question was, well, we already have Atlassian. Why can't we just turn this on? And then when there was that understanding that it's not in competition with Confluence or with Jira, because we use Jira as well for all of our marketing projects. Every time we start a job, we have to start a Jira project. What we learned late after everything was approved is that there's actually an integration within Jira that you can select, within Trello that you can select and open a Jira job. So now, when we get out of our test phase, that's actually one of the first things I'm going back to our IT department on. Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me? All right, here we go.
Yep.
Automations. How did you set up the automations and what did you use them for?
So we used the built-in automations tool, and we set up a lot of, so at the very top of the card, we would have drop-downs to say, hey, if you're planning an event and you need to take parking into consideration, or transportation, or a catering company, we had pre-built checklists, and you could drop down and say, hey, I'm gonna need a caterer for this job, I'm gonna need parking for this job, I'm gonna need to set up a shuttle, and we would have all those checklists auto-populate with the automation. And those checklists would include the contracting process with the vendor. They would include just kind of making sure that those things were considered and those things were taken care of. So we did that, and then we did a lot of linking. So for instance, if we're planning an event, we're probably gonna want social media exposure for that event. So we set up automations to say, if you're planning an event and you need a social media aspect of it, you could add the social media label to it. That would trigger the automation to create a card on the social media board that would tie back to that original event, and have those two cards linked so that you could switch back and forth, you could manage between the two of them, and really keep track of all of the different pieces that would go into managing an event, all the different communications that would have to go out, social media posts, emails, notices that would need to be all a part of that. So we did a lot of that cross-functional stuff with automations.
Mm-hmm. And one other thing is that, when he mentioned, like, there's parking and there's contracts, yes, that's, it seems very tactical, but there's also, we have to do communication to our employees around parking. We may have to create a map to show them where to go to park or to pick up a shuttle. So it also is, yes, it's the tactical side of it, but it's also the job creation side of it. If we need some design work, or we need some additional communication, whether it's an email or, like Mark mentioned, a social media post.
Yep. And another big piece that we built in is we set up a board that was just holidays. So we preloaded all the holidays for the year into there. And then we're able to set up reminders for, like, the social media team to say, hey, we're 45 days out from this holiday. So if you need to prepare any content for this holiday to go out, now is a good time to get that on the radar and start thinking that through.
And something along the lines with the holidays that I just want to mention is it's not just the traditional holidays that you're thinking about, Employee Appreciation Week, Employee Appreciation Day. Those are newer holidays that are now being acknowledged and recognized by companies. We do internal comms. Everything we do is for our employees in my department. So, that's something that's really important, and we want to make sure, and that's why the 45 days is great, because then we can align all of our senior leaders. We can make sure they know, hey, we're going to do something, and here's the plan.
Yep, and you can pre-plan and just drop any of those holidays, so long as you know when they are and get them on the radar, and then the system will just kind of generate that reminder to give you time to build out the content and get a game plan together, so nothing sneaks up on you.
Any lessons learned around sort of awareness building and training? We know, at least where I work, sometimes doing classroom type based pushed training is not always receptive. A lot of people want to learn as they go. Like, were there any good lessons learned around training, as well as sort of building awareness so people didn't feel like they were just having a new tool dropped on them at the last minute?
Yeah.
So I think with the training, we set it up. We knew how many seats we were going to purchase for Trello ahead of time. It wasn't just my department, it was some of our key stakeholders as well. We did a training that was online. I think it was Teams or Zoom.
Yep.
I don't even remember. But we also recorded it and made that recording available. So anyone who now gets a Trello account set up or turned on, they are sent the training video as well and can watch it.
Yeah. Another big piece of it was that once we kind of had the basic structure and as we were iterating the system, we were bringing in more and more people. So a lot of them already had some vision on it before we got to that training phase. They already kind of saw what it was and had some buy-in because they helped contribute to the build-out. They helped bring up and say, hey, what if me and my team need this piece to happen? Then we built that in. So they already had some buy-in before we even got to the training phase. But then we hosted a couple of different training sessions just to make sure, and we basically hit the same things in those training sessions just to make sure we kind of drilled it in a little bit.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. So I was wondering why Trello and Jira and Confluence and not just Jira and Confluence? So what was the sparkle that told you, I need also Trello?
So for me, it was the ability to do the planning ahead of time and not have to open a job, to start a job. Because when I'm doing the editorial planning and looking at the calendar, we might be planning out, each quarter, and it's not, we would have to go in, start a job, kill a job, in Jira. We would not be fluid, whereas I could plan it and know that once I start actually doing the work, I would start the Jira job. Does that make sense? So for me, it was that pre-planning ability. It was also the ability to look holistically at what is planned and make sure we were being really strategic about it versus just going in, opening jobs, and then figuring out oh, wait, you have this scheduled this day. Oh, we have a CEO message that's going to go out this day too. It really allows for that overarching view.
And your use of Jira as an environment is very regulated internally.
Yes, it is.
So
it is very
creating
regulated.
and canceling is a difficult thing in your environment.
Yeah.
So the Trello offered it offered a less regulated environment where you could more brainstorm and do more ideation. It also offered the obviously really easy interface of Trello. So for teams that are a little more reluctant to get into Jira and where Jira feels overwhelming and feels like it's a lot, Trello is super simple.
Yeah.
It's a super simple interface, and that really helped drive adoption.
Yeah, we were able to put together our communication plans. We are able to with Trello and know that, okay, we might want to do a video, but we might not. And so we don't have to move into that phase of starting the job for a video and then taking people's time and then not executing on it.
I see. So basically, it's a combination of easiness of use and friendly interfaces and kind of pre-production phase
Yes.
in a way.
Yes.
So it is not official,
Yep.
so to say, what
Yep.
we're still discussing.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, absolutely.
Etc. Once it's decided, you open an official job in Jira
Yes.
and so on and so forth.
Yep. And then that's where it moves through that more regulated process that is built out internally within Jira.
So it's more sandboxy
Yes.
with Trello in your organization.
In my world, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
What about Jira Work Management? Did you guys take a look at Jira Work Management?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
The Jira Work Management?
So they're not using Jira Work Management at the moment.
No.
Primarily just Jira for Software.
Yeah, it was like when Jira Work Management was Trello?
We kind of went with the Trello for the interface simplicity rather than the Jira Work Management. Is that the question, or are we kind of missing it?
Yeah, when to use what, like
Yeah.
Work Management versus Trello?
I think his question is a little bit more about like why Trello versus Jira Work Management and when to use one versus the other.
Yeah. So it kind of back to that last one. It was really about the interface, and really about driving that user adoption and driving those teams that were already reluctant to Jira, and just Jira in general, be it work management or Jira Software. Kind of getting them in and getting that adoption early with the interface of Trello was kind of the focus.
So I saw that y'all had tried board sync or card mirroring. Did it work? And if not, because we've tried several different options and power ups in my company and haven't found a lot of success. So I was curious if y'all had.
So that was we had a very similar situation. So we did try board mirroring and card mirroring. So one of the initial architectures was we would have the individual team boards, and then we'd have a roll-up board at the top that would mirror everything up to it. And we tried a couple different third-party power-ups to facilitate that, and we ran into either a lot of sync count limits, where they charged per sync, per card, per field even on some of them. And we really just ran into a lot of licensing issues. So we were trying to license for like an enterprise environment. And a lot of those tools are just put your credit card in and we're gonna charge it monthly. Well, in a regulated environment like this, that's really hard to just find the corporate credit card, plug it in, and have that bill monthly and where to allocate that. So we ran into licensing issues, and then we ran into some of the just basic functionality. Because we had the different team boards, and those different team boards were using different workflows, that was causing some issues on the roll-up to get a real holistic view with that roll-up view. So we ended up kind of stepping away from that. And with the built-in calendar views, even though they're on separate boards, we were still able to roll everything into one singular calendar view. And the calendar view was really the holistic view that we were looking for. The calendar and some of the timeline views. So when we dropped the board mirroring and just went with the calendars, that ended up being the perfect solution and ended up not needing the board mirroring at all.
Hi, Mark and Christy. Thank you so much for the presentation. Trello is very lightweight, and it's supposed to be used by business teams on their own style. So there's no process built in or anything. So I know there might be a structure that needs to be built, like a guardrails that you want to go outside. And we have seen Trello also being as work management. So do you track, because I know Jira is there for work management, how deep you can go, but teams are more focused and they can drill down in Trello itself to manage the work management. So now becomes the question is reporting. So some of the teams has very strict standardization on Jira, you can report on it. Trello is pretty free, and you have other teams working on work management. So how do you break these silos? I mean, what do you propose? Do you continue doing it? And how do you bring both together on a high level?
Well, honestly, my team has only been using Trello since the end of December. So we're very new at it, but we do pull reports out because, like I said, our team does also use Jira. So we do, we have the full Jira reporting on, the jobs that are started and then, are actually executed versus those that don't come to fruition. Within Trello, I think we'll probably take that same view and look at that and see. But we're very new at it, so I think it'll take us some time to figure that out.
And because we do kind of use it as that brainstorming ideation kind of lighter tool, a lot of the reporting and the metrics and stuff that make Jira great aren't really needed for that environment and that tool. But
Yeah.
for sure you do use some of the reporting.
We do, yes. And I do think that once we are able to get that, that power up, that link integration from Trello to Jira, I think we'll be able to leverage the reporting that we already have because we'll be able to see exactly what comes from Trello and then is either created, like executed into a job or gets killed.
Hi.
Hi.
You mentioned a calendar. Is this auto-populated from like start and end dates on certain tasks?
Yes.
Yep.
Is there a manual piece at all? Is it all auto-populated?
So there was a manual piece in setting them up. So we have calendars that represent each individual board, but then we also have special roll-up calendars that include all of the boards. So we could see the full publishing schedule, and you can toggle the holidays on and off as needed. So building out the calendars initially was the only manual piece. But other than that, it just triggers off the start and end dates within the cards and populates them in there.
And one of the things we have learned is if it's like a whole month-long celebration, that what we do is we will enter the start and end date at the beginning of the month. And then that way we see it, but it doesn't block out the entire month.
Yep. So a separate card for the start date and a separate card for the end date, so that you could have both dates show up in there, but just kind of the way the calendar view works, it would block out all the days for the month if you spanned it from the start and end date with a single card.
Hello, there we go. Sorry, just making sure it's on. Maybe you covered this at the beginning. I'm sorry, I was a little late, but Trello users, we found in our organization, people have found Trello themselves, and they really love Trello. We have something like 150 Trello users in our organization. We haven't officially adopted it as an IT department. Can you speak to some of the challenges you may have run into bringing those people into the fold of like an enterprise version, or was that not an issue for you?
That actually was an issue. So when I put together the business case, why we needed Trello, or something like it. I was willing to look at something different, but I was like, well, hey, we already have this, so why don't we just turn it on? When IT did their research, we found about 125 employees already had Trello boards using the free version. So what happened was some of them had already left the organization, so obviously it was just getting turned off, but they told, IT reached out to each of the individuals and said, we are transitioning to the paid version. You need to make sure that you save what you have or that you clone it, I think is what they had told them. And then they moved them over. So they are able to use it. But I do think so the way our company is set up, we have this test period. So I was approved last June 30th. So when June 30th comes around again, then we can add and take away users if we want. And it sounds like Trello may be implemented for the entire organization at that time.
That's kind of your one time a year to re-examine the scope and
and it's only
licensing.
because that was the initial architectural review board. That was when I got approval. So, and I know that's very specific to my company probably, but that is how it works there. So I know, like, I've had people leave and their account is still active because nothing will be changed until June 30th.
Can you also please speak to your strategy around organization? Kind of how you were talking about how you had to convert everybody once you went live, but just what questions you ask as far as how many workspaces to create, how you determine who has like permissions and visibility, and how you keep that clean. It sounds like you're creating a lot of Trello boards. How do you maintain control of that without having lots of junk just hanging out there?
And so that was a piece that we actually changed a couple different times as we were doing the build out. So we had how we broke out the teams was a little bit different. So at one point, events and sponsorships were all on the same board and sharing the same space. And as we worked through, as we iterated and brought more people in and got more perspective, we kind of realized that they will need different workflows and need to see different things. Sponsorship really needs to focus more on the contracting side, where events is more of the actual event planning side. So we ended up changing like the board layout and the basic structure quite a few times as we went about figuring it out and working through it.
Yeah, and I would say from an internal perspective, I started with just my immediate team and then identified other key stakeholders that we work most frequently with. And that was how I expanded our list of users. So that is really what I did. And what we have found is, the individuals who oversee Jira for the marketing department, they may go in and take a look, but they're not as interested in it now because it's not as much of a rub as they thought it was going to be.
Yep. And as far as the permissions go, one of the goals was overall transparency. So we don't actually have any restrictions from board to board. So you're either in the environment and have access to see all the boards, or you're not in the environment at all. So we wanted people to be able to flip over, if they're on the event team, to be able to flip over to the social media team and see the content that's being prepared for that event, and see the other stuff going on and get that holistic view.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.